Good morning and welcome to the Morning Scoop for Friday, January 8th. This is your daily Buckeye fix. I'm Tom Orr. The national championship game against Alabama is in 3 days. The game against Michigan in 323 days. Thursday was another busy day of interviews for Ohio State's offense and Alabama's defense. Buckeye Scoop beat reporter Tony Gerdeman was there for every single minute of it, and he is my guest this morning. Tony, let's start with the big question. Is the national championship game still on track to get played on Monday night?
Yes, in fact, it is, Tom. As of the last time speaking with anybody at Ohio State, which was Thursday, late afternoon, yes, all signs are still pointing to a football game happening. Ryan Day was asked how close Ohio State is getting to the 53-man limit, and he said, I don't know. And then he said, we'll have plenty of players available. So perhaps crisis averted at the moment. Yes, the game is still on, and the team will eventually be leaving for Miami. Tom, as will we.
Yes, we will be on an airplane to Miami tomorrow morning, probably about the time that you're listening to this. If you listen to this in the morning, offer not valid if you listen to it the night before, but that's okay. We will be down in an airplane on the way down to Miami on Saturday morning. Buckeyes will be headed down there a little bit later in the day. And then Alabama is actually flying down later today. So they will be, as with the Sugar Bowl, the Buckeyes' opponent will be there one day before the Buckeyes are. So. But yes, as far as will the game be played or not, there have been a bunch of crazy rumors. Once again, we are letting you know the game is on track to be played on Monday. Everyone can relax. Something else people may be a little bit more relaxed about right now, the status of Ohio State quarterback Justin Fields. We learned a little bit more about how he answers questions about injuries before the Sugar Bowl. And then based on what he said last night about his rib injury, I think it sounds like he's on track to play Monday night as well.
Indeed, there would be, he left no doubt that he will be ready to go, saying, I'll be ready by Monday night. And it seems like from the way we got to watch him move, which was sitting in a chair, he was doing just fine. And we've seen him sit painfully in the Zoom chair recently after the Clemson game. And you could tell he was hurting then. You could not tell he was hurting now, if he was hurting at all. And so, yeah, he's good to go there. Even if he's not, I don't think anybody thinks he's 100%, but he doesn't have to be 100% to still play in this game. Doesn't need to be 100% to play well. And I don't know that he needs to be 100% to be his normal effective self. It's just really how much punishment are you going to draw up for him? And I don't think they're going to draw up much for him. Just keep him protected. And I still think there'll be some need to threaten the run to help out Trey Sermon. But yes, he will be good to go unless everybody is lying to us, including Justin Fields himself. And I don't think that's the case.
I don't get the sense that that's the case. And based on what he said, it seemed like maybe if you had like an army of people, maybe you could keep him from getting to the stadium and playing in the game. But anything short of that, he sounds pretty dead set on playing, and sounds like he's probably in decent shape. And this is the time of year with college football teams where, like baseball pitchers at the end of the season, like nobody's arm is actually feeling that great at the end of the season because it's hard on your arm to throw a season of baseball. It is hard on your body to play a season of college football. I don't think there's anyone who's feeling 100% this time of year, even if they say they're feeling 100%. So the fact that Justin Fields may be a little shy of 100% is probably doesn't make him all that much of an outlier. Trey Sermon is an interesting topic because, he was someone who, not that long ago, was sort of the forgotten man on the Ohio State offense, where he was just okay. And then, the Michigan State game, and then the Northwestern game, and the Clemson game, and it's all of a sudden it's like, oh, people are throwing around Ezekiel Elliott 2014 comps. Okay, so that's different. What is Alabama's defense? We talked to Alabama defensive coordinator Pete Golding. What does Pete Golding and the Alabama defense see when they look at Trey Sermon?
They see a guy who doesn't go down with first contact, who is tough to catch and then tackle. You have to gang tackle him. You have to hold on to him. He's shifty. Golding said he's got breakaway speed. He has hands, and basically a complete running back that will pose threats all over the place, not unlike Alabama's own running back, Najee Harris. And so they have to fly to the ball, everybody collectively getting after it and trying to contain him. And then still, Tom, even as you contain him, then you also have to worry about the cutbacks. And that's where he's really excelled with the way the Ohio State offensive line has been dominating people, where they open up a lane, and there's some over pursuit there, and that's another thing that Alabama will have to be focused on and just remain very, very disciplined. That was one of the things they kept talking about all day long, guarding the entire defense, the entire Ohio State offense. Is just you have to be disciplined. If you give Sermon just even a little bit, and you're not gap sound, he'll see it, he'll find it. And right now, with the way he is gelling with the offensive line, he knows where everybody's going to be. He's got the feel that you want your running backs to have. I think it's the kind of feel that they need when they're going through something like this, when you're in the zone, as he has said. And then, it's the gaps that seem wider than they are. Things slow down. And I think if things are still slowed down for him, then it's going to be up to Alabama to make sure that there are roadblocks on every avenue, and just to keep him. That's fine if he sees all the holes, as long as the holes get filled up quickly. I'm thinking that's how they're viewing it.
And in addition to the players who are going to be playing in this year's game and starting in this year's game for Ohio State, we had one very interesting conversation about a player who probably will not start this game, almost certainly will not start this game for Ohio State, but might be a very big piece of the Ohio State program moving forward starting next season. And that's Paris Johnson, the 5-star offensive tackle, #1 offensive lineman in the country. He got called on in a backup role to step in after first Harry Miller went down and was unavailable for the game, and then Matt Jones went down, and it was just like, ta-da, here's this true freshman thrown into the starting left guard job in the middle of the Clemson game. How is he going to do? And the answer was like, oh yeah, he's fine. And so Josh Myers got asked about him, just what he's seen out of Paris Johnson, and was that a surprise? And Josh Myers, it was a very funny answer. It was like he was trying very hard not to say something really irresponsible. And then he said something that's like, yeah, that was actually probably pretty irresponsible.
Yeah. He was asked about Paris Johnson, and he said the standard stuff. He's extremely talented. He's really good, really hard worker, and has the right mindset. And then he paused and was like, and I don't know if I should say this. And then he goes on to say, if Paris Johnson doesn't win the Outland by the time he's done here, he screwed something up. And a reminder, it has been 25 years since an Ohio State Buckeye has won the Outland Trophy, the last being Orlando Pace. So to say something like, yeah, if you don't do what Orlando Pace did, you failed or you've screwed something up, is a big thing. And it wasn't, you think about it, and it's not necessarily like he's putting this pressure on Paris Johnson and he thinks like maybe the pressure will be too much. He doesn't want to say this thing that he thinks about Paris Johnson, like he is so good, he should do this, and then have that reach Paris Johnson's ears, and then he gets a big head. And so there's this just interesting where, this is what he thinks, and he's telling everybody, he's like, I don't think I should say this, but you're not going to stop me from saying it. Somebody please stop me. All right, now I'm saying it. Forget it. This is the last game. I'm just going to let it all hang out there. And then he said it. And the Paris Johnson, Orlando Pace comparisons, that's the standard when you're the 5-star Ohio State or the 5-star Ohio offensive lineman. You generally get some of those comparisons. And it's not that Josh Myers compared him to Orlando Pace, but the Outland Trophy is something that no Buckeye has done since Pace, so you can put the two together. But it's still, I don't think it's the expectations. It's just the praise that he was concerned that it would be too much or not too much. Just don't want to be taken the wrong way. Don't want to get the big head. But when you say something like that about a true freshman, Josh obviously knew what he was saying, and that's why he kind of like, I'm going to say this. And just be prepared, and here we go, and deal with it now.
It was very matter of fact, and I kind of got the sense that like this is probably not the first time he has said these words out loud. He's probably said them out loud to Paris Johnson at some point in the past. So yeah, that was one of those in a day full of people talking about how the other team is really good and it's going to be quite a unique challenge. That was one of those like, oh, that was interesting. Another interesting conversation was with Jordan Battle, the safety for Alabama, who was committed to Ohio State right up till early signing day in 2018. He was a 4-star commit, someone that Ohio State really wanted. and then flipped to Alabama on early signing day, late enough that Ohio State did not have an opportunity to replace him in that class, which is, I mean, you have probably recognized his name, and it's because we have said his name a few times as we were explaining why is Ohio State so shorthanded in the defensive backfield. And there's a bunch of reasons. Jordan Battle flipping from Ohio State to Alabama on early signing day a couple of years ago is one of them. So he was asked, why'd you flip? What did Jordan Battle have to say?
Well, basically, it was a personal decision, and he had to do what was best for him. He said he was talking to his family recently, and that it was funny to them that even if he had gone to Ohio State, he would still be playing in this game. I don't know how funny it is to Ohio State. They could have used him this year and even last year to some extent, but he was asked again, about the process of decommitting from Ohio State and committing to Alabama. And he really didn't go into it, said didn't really remember too much of it, saying there's a, quote, too much in college, unquote, for him to remember the exact process of deciding on Alabama over Ohio State. It was a little odd. It was a little just different. I mean, generally, players can tell you why, like the exact reason why they chose another school and in the process, but basically just a personal decision that he felt Alabama would get him where he needed to be. Plus the whole Urban Meyer thing, like he was committed to Urban Meyer. Urban Meyer leaves. He doesn't know Ryan Day. Ryan Day comes from the offensive side of the ball and is now the head coach, and who knows what he's going to be bringing in defensively. So it's not unusual to see guys decommit when a head coach changes position. In fact, it's unusual when you can keep as many guys as Ryan Day did. So yeah, that was like as you said, we've talked about Jordan Battle a lot on all of these podcasts because he's a guy that could have made a difference for Ohio State this year. And now they get to see him on the other side of the ball, and we'll see how it goes.
And another player who we got to talk to who was, I think, pretty interesting was Dylan Moses. He was a 5-star recruit in the class of 2017, number 13 player overall in the country in that class. He has had kind of a strange career because he started off, he looked like he was going to be a huge impact player. Then he had a season-ending injury, has kind of come back slowly from that. He's back, he's playing, but he's not, he seems like he's not quite what he was physically before that injury. And he reminds me a little bit of Tough Borland, where Tough Borland was not obviously a 5-star recruit, but Tough Borland was an immediate impact guy at Ohio State, had an injury, seemed like he probably had a little bit of a recovery period, ramp up period again for him. But then you hear people talking about Dylan Moses, and they talk about him the same way that Ohio State people talk about Tough Borland and like all the stuff he does for the defense that, the average person is probably not seeing, but is like, this makes the difference between being a good defense and a bad defense.
Yeah, a lot of what we heard from Clemson about James Skalski, their middle linebacker. Dylan Moses gets everybody where they need to be, gets lined up, makes all of the calls, and so when he's not out there, they miss that. And as we saw with Tough Borland, he is playing better this year than he did last year, and there's a reason for that. It takes a while to come back from injury fully, and they're saying the same thing with Moses. It takes a while, and he'll be better next year, assuming, not next year, but just the idea of you get better each year following an injury. And so that's where he is. This year he's still leading the team in tackles, 74 tackles. He's got 6.5 tackles for loss and 1.5 sacks. But you watch him play a little bit, and you see people talking poorly about his pass defense. They'll show you clips of how much holding he does against tight ends and running backs and in his pass defense. And he's talked about like a guy that Ohio State can attack. And yet on the other hand, he's talked about as this guy makes the Alabama defense a whole lot better. And so there is the Tough Borland comparison there, because you hear so much about Tough Borland holding the Ohio State defense back, except for when you talk to the coaches, and it's like, we wouldn't be here without Tough Borland. He's the best thing we've got. And we need him out there. And it's similar with Dylan Moses. And yeah, how those two go, Borland and Moses, against the respective running games will be a deciding factor in these trenches, as they are the guys waiting right outside the trench for whoever to show up. Well,
and if Alabama's defense, if one of the strengths of Alabama's defense is they're always in the right place, and you don't see guys, I mean, Wyatt Davis talked about the fact you don't ever see guys going, looping the wrong way on blitzes or anything like that. Like they don't make those mistakes. and you're the guy who's in charge of getting those guys lined up. Like, well, that means that's probably pretty important, and you're probably doing a pretty darn good job of it. Speaking of someone who's probably doing a pretty good job of what they're doing, Nick Saban. Turns out he's a pretty good college football coach. Go ahead and take a moment to write that down. I know that's big news. Pick your jaw up off the floor. Yes, Nick Saban, good college football coach. What was interesting on Thursday, though, Nick Saban was almost not a college football coach. Nick Saban had no interest in being a college football coach and had to be talked into even giving it a shot. So, Tony, share that story with the listeners.
Yeah, when he played football at Kent State for Don James, who was the Hall of Fame coach at Washington, that I think we all remember him from. And so he graduated, and Don James was like, I want you to be a graduate assistant. I want you to be a GA for us. And Nick Saban was like, no way. I'm not interested in doing that. I don't want to do that. And then after thinking about it, his wife at the time, Terry, is still Miss Terry today. They were married, and she was a year behind Nick, and they promised their parents, like, if you let us get married, we'll both stay in school. We'll both graduate. And so to follow through on that promise, Nick Saban was like, all right, I'll be your stinking GA. I'll do this coaching thing for a year, but then I'm out of here. And it turns out he really, really liked it. And also, Tom, turns out he was pretty darn good at it pretty early on. And I think it's still getting better, the crazy thing.
Well, and the funny thing he said right at the end of that story was he liked it because it was like being a player, but you didn't have to run wind sprints at the end of practice if you were a coach. It was like, this is all the good stuff about being a player without the bad stuff about being a player. Like, aha, maybe I'll make a career out of this. And TLDR, he did. So that brings us to Monday. Monday is the national championship game with Nick Saban's Alabama Crimson Tide playing Ryan Day's Ohio State Buckeyes. Tony and I will be on an airplane down to Miami on Saturday morning. We will have coverage along with Mark Givler, Kirk Barton. We will have a whole bunch of the Buckeye Scoop team down in Miami for this one. It's because it's kind of a big game. I don't know. I don't want to blow things out of proportion, but as far as college football games go, this is one of the bigger ones you'll see this year. So we will have the team down in Miami for this. Make sure you keep checking out BuckeyeScoop.com all weekend for tons of great coverage down from Miami. Alabama arrives later on tonight. Ohio State arrives tomorrow afternoon. And we'll have coaches' press conferences on Sunday. And then Monday, it is game day. Ohio State, one win away from a national championship. Seems like it might be a good time to join BuckeyeScoop.com. I mean, I don't want to put on too hard of a sales pitch here, but, as far as times to join BuckeyeScoop.com to be absolutely as up-to-date with as much info as you can possibly have before a football game, this seems like a fairly important football game to sort of know what's going on. So might be a good time to hop on BuckeyeScoop.com, sign up for a membership, give it a month. We keep having people say, all right, fine, you wore me out. You've said this 50 days in a row. All right, fine, I'm going to do it. And they're like, hey, this is really good. And just, I feel like the Buckeye Scoop account on Twitter retweets these people when they do it. But it's just like, that is constantly the reaction is like, oh, wow, this is as good as you guys say it was. So give it a month, give it a shot. And we're pretty sure you're going to like it because pretty much everyone else does. So that's all at BuckeyeScoop.com. We're also going to have a busy weekend of podcasts. Tony and I, I'm sure, will have a million Buckeye Weekly shows from down in Miami, as well as some morning scoop stuff. And there will be, I'm guessing, we might get some Kirk Barton Scoop World Order. I don't know. There's going to be a lot of stuff coming on this weekend down in Miami. So make sure you check out all of our podcasts on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, SoundCloud, Spotify. Just search Buckeye Scoop to find all of them. You can subscribe right there. Also leave us a 5-star rating and review, which helps other folks find these shows. And please do that. I'm not kidding. I'm not kidding when I say that. I don't think we've had a review on this show in a while. So leave us a nice 5-star rating and review. Make me feel good as I'm flying down to Miami. That'll be great. So thank you guys for joining us. Have a great day. We'll have another morning scoop coming up pretty soon. But have a great weekend. But we'll be talking to you plenty over the weekend because hey, there's a football game on Monday that you might care about. Talk to you then.